The silent birth. In the village of Okutala, time moved like smoke, slow, soft, and shaped by the wind. Life there was simple. Roosters screamed like unpaid workers every morning, goats walked with more attitude than the village chief, and children chased after rolling mangoes like it was a national sport. But for Marembi, each passing day was a needle. She and her husband, Omori, had been married for over 10 years. 10 long years. 10 prayer-soaked, herb-filled, tear-heavy years, with no child to show for it. She had tried everything, herbal teas that tasted like firewood, blessings from wise women, even a night spent under the sacred fig tree while humming ancient lullabies. But nothing. Her belly remained quiet, like a house with no tenant. Omori never complained, at least not out loud. He loved Marembi with a patient kind of love, the kind that doesn't break but bends in silence. Still, she saw the pain behind his forced smiles when other men patted their sons on the back, or when mothers carried babies wrapped in colorful cloth like living trophies. Then, one evening, the wind changed. It was market day, and Marembi had just returned home carrying a basket of roasted maize and dried fish. The sky, once blue and calm, began to darken, not with clouds, but with something stranger. The sun, bold and unapologetic, suddenly dulled like a flame caught in a glass jar. The village fell silent. Even the animals grew still. And then it happened. A loud wail tore through the village, not from a child, but from Marembi herself. She was on the ground, clutching her stomach, eyes wide with disbelief. Omori ran to her, barefoot, shouting for help. The eclipse hung over the sky like a bad omen, but to Marembi, it was the beginning of something else. They rushed her into the hut. The old midwife, Mama Zula, didn't even light the oil lamp. She walked by instinct, by feel, by memory. Her hands moved like a song only she could hear. Outside, the villagers whispered. A child born during an eclipse. That's not just a baby, that's a sign. Or a warning. Inside the hut, the air was thick with heat and fear. Then suddenly, silence. No cries. No coos. No soft wailing that tells the world, I'm here. The baby had arrived. But it made no sound. Marembi sat up slowly. She looked down at the tiny creature wrapped in a faded blue cloth. The child's eyes were wide open. Wide. And bright. As if they were already watching everything. He's perfect, she whispered, holding him close to her chest. Omori stepped in, his shirt soaked with sweat. His face lit up when he saw them. A boy, Mama Zula said. Strong lungs. But silent. Why isn't he crying? Omori asked, the joy in his voice tipping toward worry. Not all children need to cry, Mama Zula replied, although even she looked unsure. Some come into this world with secrets already known. They named him Kyo, meaning a gift in the old tongue. The village reacted the way villages do, with gossip disguised as concern and concern dripping with suspicion. A baby who never cries. Wasn't he born during the black sun? She waited too long. Maybe the spirit sent something else. Marembi ignored them. She clutched her son like he was the last piece of her soul. Kyo was quiet, yes, but also peaceful. He slept through thunder. He stared at faces like he'd seen them before. But Omori began to change. He would wake up gasping in the middle of the night, clutching his chest like something had crawled over it. He'd dream of a great tree, roots soaked in blood, and a serpent coiled in the branches, watching him with the same wide eyes as Kyo. And sometimes, at night, when he turned to glance at his sleeping son, Kyo would be looking right back at him. Awake. Silent. Smiling. One night, Omori crept out of bed and lit a small fire behind the house. He sat with an elder named Babu Sefiu, the village's last living storyteller and keeper of ancient knowledge. Omori's voice shook. Is it possible that something can look like a child, but not be one? Bobu Sefu didn't answer immediately. He threw a pinch of salt into the fire. The river brings what it wants, he said. Not always what we ask for. If a mother cries long enough, the spirits may listen. But not all spirits speak the same language. Meanwhile, inside their hut, Marembi rocked Kyo gently. She hummed a lullaby passed down by her grandmother. As she looked into her baby's eyes, a breeze passed through the room, yet the window was closed. She blinked. For just a moment, Kyo's shadow on the wall seemed longer than his body. Thinner. Slithering. She shook her head. No, she said aloud. He's my son. My gift. My blessing. But deep in the corners of the room, the air stayed colder than it should have been. The woman with the moon eyes. Weeks passed in Okutola, and the whispers about Marembi's son had evolved into full-on side-eyes and neighborly paranoia. People stopped calling him Kyo. They called him the quiet one. Or worse, the watcher. Marembi didn't care. Her love was louder than their gossip. But even love can't plug the ears of fear forever. And that's when she arrived. It was a humid Tuesday when a stranger walked into the village, a woman wrapped in layers of deep blue cloth that shimmered like the night sky. She had a long staff, a tiny pouch tied to her waist, and eyes. Oh, those eyes. They looked like moonlight trapped in water, silver, soft, and terrifying all at once. The villagers watched her approach the square. Even the goats stopped chewing. Kids froze in mid-mango chase. I am Zubri, she said calmly. A traveler. A healer. A friend of the unseen. Nobody asked her why she was there. It felt like she'd already been there before she even arrived. That evening, Zubri sat near the fire at the chief's compound. She spoke little. Observed much. Omori sat on the edge of the crowd, rubbing the back of his neck. Marembi, baby Kyo tied to her back, stood close to the flames. Kyo's eyes were wide open, staring at Zubri as if he knew her from another life. Zubri didn't flinch. She gave the child one long look, then smiled. He sees beyond the skin, she said. Rare. Beautiful. Dangerous. Marembi's heart skipped. He's just a baby. Zubri tilted her head. Are you sure? Over the next few days, Zubri became an unusual fixture in the village. She healed an elder's sore foot with a strange chant and tree bark that smelled like lightning. She found a missing goat by whispering to a crow. She told stories with meanings nobody fully understood. And she kept visiting Marembi. Every single day. I want to bless the boy, Zubri said one morning, her voice like wind in tall grass. No need, Marembi said gently, cradling Kyo. He's already a blessing. Zubri's smile tightened, like a snake preparing to strike. Meanwhile, Omari's dreams had gotten worse. He saw fires. A serpent coiled around his throat. A cradle filled not with a baby, but with ashes. He stopped sleeping next to Marembi. He started praying louder at night. One day, an old man named Movu, a half-blind village healer, called Marembi aside. His heart smelled like pepper, dust, and ancient warnings. Keep the boy away from her, he said. Zubri? Marembi asked. Movu nodded. She walks like a woman, but her shadow moves like smoke. The child born in silence will not speak until it remembers what it was. What does that mean? Marembi whispered. It means, Movu replied, eyes cloudy, that your child may not be yours alone. That night, the wind didn't blow. Not even a leaf dared to move. Marembi placed Kyo in his small woven crib and lay beside him. Omari was outside again, tending to the fire that never seemed to warm him. Marembi closed her eyes. She began to hum. Then she stopped. Because something had changed in the room. The air felt too still. Like the village was holding its breath. And then, it came. A voice. Deep. Clear. Grown. Mama, it said. Marembi sat up so fast she nearly fell out of bed. Her heart slammed against her chest like a trapped bird. She turned slowly. Kyo was lying in his crib. Still. Awake. His mouth slightly open. Mama, I remember now, the voice said again, but Kyo's lips didn't move. The voice filled the room, but came from nowhere and everywhere at once. I remember fire. I remember betrayal. I remember death. Marembi backed away, her hands shaking. Her mind screamed to run. But her heart, the one that had waited 10 years for this child, stood still. Kyo, she whispered. The baby blinked once. Then closed his eyes. And went back to sleep. Like nothing happened. Marembi didn't sleep that night. She didn't blink. She didn't breathe unless Kyo did first. By sunrise, she knew one thing for sure. Something had returned with her son. And it was just beginning to remember. Shadows in the cradle. It began with the snake. Not a real one, though in Okutela, those were common enough. No, this snake only lived in Omori's dreams. Every night it slithered closer. First it cawed outside the house. Then on the rooftop. Then by the doorway. Then, finally, around the crib. And each time, its eyes were Kyo's eyes. Omori would wake in a cold sweat, heart pounding, chest tight. At first, he told himself it was just exhaustion. Then he blamed the maize beer. But deep down, he knew. Something was watching them from inside the child. Outside their home, Zubri's silver gaze slinked through the village like fog. She had wormed her way into the hearts of the villagers, one portion at a time, one soft-spoken warning after another. Marembi's baby doesn't blink like other babies. I saw him whispering to the wind. He drew something strange in the dirt, symbols I've seen only in burial caves. Rumors, when fed daily, grow fat. And in Okutela, they were eating well. Marembi, still holding her ground like a mother lioness guarding her cub, noticed Kyo's behavior shifting too. He began talking, but not to people. To shadows. To corners. To the space under the bed. She would hear soft whispers coming from his mouth, like he was having conversations with invisible friends who answered back in silence. One day, she found him crouched near the well, his tiny fingers drawing symbols in the dirt, loops, triangles, an eye with 7 lashes, and a snake biting its tail. She washed the drawings away with a trembling hand and whispered, "Please, please stop." Kyo looked up, blinked once, and said, "But they told me to draw it, Mama. The old ones." Marembi's blood turned to ice. Because the old ones was a term used only in ancestral incantations, not baby bedtime stories. Meanwhile, Omori began to slip away emotionally. He ate in silence, rarely looked at Kyo, and spent long hours near the edge of the village. His eyes carried a storm no one could calm. And Zubiri noticed. She waited. She planned. And then, she struck. One smoky morning, Zubiri gathered the villagers at the central square. Her cloak fluttered in the wind like it had its own opinion. "The spirits are restless," she announced. Everyone leaned in, mouths open like baskets ready for fruit. I felt their unease. Heard their warnings. Something unnatural lives among us. She never said Marembi's name. She didn't have to. Old Man Boko was the first to speak. "I've seen the child. He looks at you like he knows your sins." "I saw him twist a chicken's neck without touching it," said another. "I heard him laughing at the graveyard." "Alone," cried a third. Of course, none of these things had actually happened, but fear doesn't need proof. It just needs fuel. Zubri stoked the fire. The mother must be cleansed, she said. Or exiled. Before it's too late. By nightfall, the drums of judgment began to beat. Omori stood outside his home, eyes to the ground, while the crowd gathered. Marembi, holding Kyo close, faced them all. She looked straight at Zubri and said, I see what you are. You hide behind cloth and herbs. But your heart is not clean. Zubri's face remained calm. But her eyes, they burned. The child must go, said one of the elders. Or you both must leave. Before this curse spreads. Then came the moment that broke Marembi's heart. Omori stepped forward. He opened his mouth to speak. And said nothing. He looked at his wife, at his child, and turned away. Not with anger. Not with hate. But with fear. That was worse. The villagers began to chant. Cleanse the cradle. Save the village. Send her away. But Marembi didn't cry. She didn't beg. She kissed her son's forehead and said, no one will take you from me. And in that moment, something strange happened. The wind picked up. The fire in the center of the square blew out all at once. And every child in the village started crying. At the exact same time. Every single one. Even the newborn twins who hadn't made a sound in days. The villagers froze, eyes wide. Zubri frowned. And Kyo. He looked up at the sky, smiled softly, and said, they found me again. The trial beneath the baobab tree. The baobab tree in Okutola was older than time, or so the elders said. Its roots curled like the veins of the earth, and its trunk was so wide, 10 men holding hands could not wrap around it. It wasn't just a tree. It was a witness. Every trial, every declaration of guilt, every village secret whispered through tears, the baobab heard them all. Now, once again, the villagers gathered beneath its vast branches. But this time, it wasn't a thief or a dispute over stolen cassava. It was a baby. Marembi stood in the center of the circle, wrapped in red and white cloth, Kyo tied firmly to her back. The baby's head rested on her shoulder, eyes half-lidded like he was dreaming through the noise. The crowd was restless. Some people looked angry. Some looked scared. And some looked like they didn't want to be there at all. At the front sat the council of elders, 5 ancient men who looked like they'd been carved from stone and smoked with tradition. Their job? To decide what was best for the village, even if it meant breaking a mother's heart. And beside them, like a shadow made flesh, stood Zubri. She was dressed differently now. No longer wrapped in Hila's cloth. She wore a long robe as dark as midnight, embroidered with symbols no one dared ask about. But it was her eyes that caused the murmur in the crowd, glowing, as if tiny moons had settled inside her skull. Elder Kanda, the oldest of the group, raised his staff. Let it be known, he began, his voice thick and gravelly, that we meet today not to punish, but to protect. Murmurs of agreement. Our village has lived in peace. But peace cannot grow where darkness takes root. And now, we must face what stands before us. He turned to Marembi. Woman of Okutola. What are you hiding on your back? Marembi stepped forward. Her voice didn't shake. My son. My gift from the ancestors. My Kyo. Zubri's soft laugh cut through the air like a sharp knife. Is that what you believe, she said, stepping forward. Or is that what you need to believe? The crowd hushed as Zubri lifted her hand, and with it, the wind rose. Dust danced like spirits waking from a nap. You all welcomed me into this village as a healer, she said, but I am not one of herbs and roots. She paused. Her eyes met Marembi's. Then Kyo's. I was sent from the other side, from the realm beyond rivers and flames. To retrieve what was stolen. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Stolen. Elder Konda asked. From whom? Zubri lifted her chin. From the spirits. From those who guard the balance. She pointed at Kyo. That child is not a child. He is a vessel. A hiding place. A prison. Inside him sleeps a guardian who once defied the laws of the unseen world and fled his punishment. The eclipse marked his return. Omori, standing at the edge of the crowd, finally spoke. But he's just a baby. Zubri turned to him. Then why do you dream of snakes? She asked. Why do you wake trembling in fear, hearing hissing in your bones? You know it too, father of the vessel. You've always known. Omori lowered his eyes. Marembi stepped forward. He is my son. I don't care if he was once a spirit or a shadow or a storm. He is mine now. And what if he becomes what he was? Zubri asked. Will you still hold him when he burns the land beneath his feet? The elders were silent. One by one, they looked to Elder Konda. The choice, he said slowly, is between sacrifice and faith. We can banish the child to protect the village, or allow fate to take its course, whatever price that brings. A murmur erupted from the crowd. Kill it now, before it grows teeth. It's a baby, not a beast. Let the gods decide. Let the mother keep him. Voices clashed like spears in a storm. Suddenly, Kyo stirred. He lifted his head and looked straight at the elders. His eyes were glowing gold. And then, in a voice that echoed in every chest, he spoke. I did not choose to return. I was brought here by her wish. He turned to Marembi. Your pain called to me. And the spirits answered. Tears streamed down Marembi's face. She dropped to her knees and whispered, if I must carry your punishment with you, then so be it. The wind stilled. Even the baobab's mighty leaves held their breath. Zubri stepped forward, her face unreadable. She opened her mouth to speak, but stopped. Because in that moment, Kyo smiled. And Zubri vanished. Not in a flash of fire. Not in a puff of smoke. She simply faded. As if she had never been there at all. The elders rose. Elder Konda slammed his staff into the ground. So it shall be. The child stays. The mother stays. But the village must watch with both eyes. For love is a shield, but it is not always a sword. That night, under a sky full of uneasy stars, Marembi held Kyo close. He slept like a normal baby. But deep in the woods, where Zubri had once walked, a whisper drifted through the trees. He remembers more each day, the return to light. The days after the trial were quiet. Too quiet. Even the village goats seemed to tiptoe. Zubri was gone, but her shadow still clung to the walls like smoke that refused to clear. The villagers avoided Marembi's path, even as they whispered her name like it might summon thunder. But Marembi didn't care. Not anymore. She had survived exile without leaving. She had faced gods without kneeling. And she still had Kyo. But deep in the forest, something stirred. The ancient spirits had not forgotten. Zubri had not failed. Not yet. She returned, this time not walking, but drifting, barely touching the earth. Her eyes no longer silver, but black as a starless night. There was no cloak. No smile. Just power. And in her hand, a bowl carved from bone, filled with river water that shimmered unnaturally. This was the final rite, the one that would tear the soul from the vessel and return it to judgment. That night, under the crooked eye of a crescent moon, Marembi felt it. Her bones rattled. Her breath shortened. She knew something had come for them. Kyo sat upright in his mat before she even touched him. She's here. Marembi carried him, wrapped in cloth, through the back door. She didn't run. She walked. Straight to the place where it all began. The river Aidanu. A place so sacred, even birds avoided landing on its stones. Zubri waited on the riverbank. Her robe billowed, though there was no wind. Behind her, spectral shapes flickered, elders of the unseen world, their faces blurred, their voices like falling leaves. You called him forth with a bargain, Zubri said. Now the price must be paid. Marembi stepped forward. I remember. She looked down at Kyo. He wasn't born by accident. He was gifted, yes. But also chosen. She looked up at the spirits. I was barren. Empty. For 10 long years. I came to this river and cried until my tears became part of it. Her voice broke, but she kept going. I said, give me a child, even if it cost me my life. And the river answered. Zubri nodded. Then why resist? Let him return to where he belongs. But Marembi shook her head. I didn't ask for a perfect child. I asked for a child. This one. With all his mysteries and moonlit eyes. She reached for Kyo, but something stopped her. The air split open. The spirits whispered. The bowl in Zubri's hand began to glow. Kyo's body lifted into the air, limbs limp, eyes closed. Zubri chanted in a forgotten tongue. But Marembi stepped forward again. This time, she sang. Not a ritual. Not an incantation. Just a lullaby. The one her mother had sung to her. The one she had sung to Kyo since the day of the eclipse. And as the melody danced over the river, the light around Kyo began to change. No longer red and violent. But golden. His body shimmered, then cracked with light, like a shell breaking from within. Zubri gasped. What are you doing? But Marembi didn't stop singing. And Kyo. Kyo opened his eyes. He was no longer just a child. He stood tall, glowing, radiant, a perfect blend of flesh and spirit, human and beyond. His voice echoed with ancient wisdom and childlike warmth all at once. I remember now, he said. I was a guardian once. Feared. Banished. But she gave me a new name. A new purpose. He turned to Zubri. This time, I choose her. Zubri's form trembled. The spirits behind her howled like wind through broken trees. And then, she vanished. No drama. No thunderclap. Just gone, like smoke finally letting go of fire. The river fell still. Kyo walked to Marembi and took her hand. I'm both now, he said simply. Of here, and not. But your love gave me balance. Back in the village, the clouds that had hung over Okutule for weeks began to part. Birds sang again. Even the mangoes seemed to ripen with more sweetness. Elder Konda called for a village gathering. He looked at Marembi and Kyo and said, we were afraid of what we didn't understand. But now we know, love doesn't just create life. It redeems it. From that day forward, Kyo was no longer called the quiet one. He was called Mwanga, the light that returned. Final scene. Years later, children in Okutela would gather beneath the baobab tree, begging for stories. And the elders would say, once, a child was born without a cry. He did not belong to our world, or any. But his mother's love rode the stars. And somewhere in the distance, a serpent would hiss softly in the wind. Not with anger, but with peace. Party Popper the end Party Popper.